Hi, this is Carla, and welcome to Lesson 3 of Faces Mini. The idea with this lunch hour series is that we watch the video, gather our supplies, and do the exercises in about the time that we'd take for a lunch. Of course, you don't have to do it during lunchtime, but to that end, I want you to really think of especially today's exercises as just exercises. We're going to do 13 drawings. All of them are going to be pretty quick and hopefully lots of fun. So the supplies you'll need are your worksheet for day 3, some cardstock or any kind of paper really. This is sort of a smooth cardstock. For the color part of the lesson, I have a mixed media sketchbook here. You'll also need a pencil. I love the mechanical pencil because the point is always sharp and the eraser is nice and hard, and today we're going to be erasing a lot. A kneaded rubber eraser is great, and you'll find that very helpful. Some kind of timer, I have my phone here, and some pastels. 5 or 6 colors of different pastels. Here I have some chalk pastels, here are pan pastels. You can do one or the other, and I'll demonstrate with both. But first we'll start with the worksheet. Okay, so we have our same gentleman from yesterday, and I've done a little tracing of the drawing here, his basic face shape and everything, so you don't have to worry about drawing because all we're doing right now is working on lights and darks. And what you're going to be doing is adding in pencil over here the areas that are darker and leaving blank the areas that are lighter. And one way I've found over the years that helps me a lot is to squint my eyes to see those shadows. Sometimes if you look at things straight on, it can be harder. So squint your eyes and you'll start to get a feel like really quickly where those darks are. And as I do that, I'm noticing that underneath his hat are some darks here. And I'm remembering that this is an exercise and not a final drawing, so I'm not going to be too fussy about my lines or anything. But I am going to add in details, darker details, like that little line there. So I'm just, again, not worrying about drawing on the eye right now. I'm worried about just adding the lights and dark lines that I see. I'm just noticing that this area here is a lot darker than the nose, so that's why I went in there. This area over here is starting to get about as light as the nose, so I'm going to back off over there. If you find that you're getting a little too hung up with nose and mouth and eyes, you can always turn this upside down and do it that way. It's harder for me to do that right now because I'm right-handed. I'm going to turn it back. Okay, so spend about 5 to 8 minutes getting your shading in, squinting your eyes. I'm not going to finish this on camera. I'll have my finished piece for you on the blog, but we'll just move on to the next exercise. So for the next exercise, we're going to spend some time erasing. And I'm going to start right now by making 6 little circles. Let me make these heavier so you can see them on camera. And then before we move to the erasing step, we're going to define our face with an eraser. I'm going to go and just add some pigment to all my faces. It doesn't need to be smooth or even covered completely 100%. Okay, so So next you need to get out a timer, and I have here my phone. I have it set for 1 minute. And the reason we're doing these timed is partly because we have limited time, and I don't want you to spend too much time on these little faces. We're gonna do 6 of them. I'm gonna set my timer, and what you're gonna do is, instead of drawing in the shadows like we did just now on the worksheet, we're going to erase the highlights. These are imaginary. Can be imaginary faces. You're going to spend a lot of time erasing, a little bit drawing back in maybe, but it's mostly erasing. So let's get started. Each one of these will take about a minute, each little face. It's a fast pace, but it's not a breakneck speed pace. I'm remembering from my older guy that the cheek planes usually are in highlight, and also the nose is usually quite dark. Under the nose, it's usually a little bit darker, but we also have a mouth to deal with, so it's kind of one of those situations where the mouth is lighter or darker than the above the mouth. I'm going to use my eraser to define his face shape. And there I go, on to the next one. It goes very fast, actually. One thing you can also do is take your eraser and sort of smear the graphite around a little bit, just to smooth it out. I don't know if you can see that difference before you start erasing. Trying to get an ear in there. Go back in if you need to darken up some areas. And you're either going to stop working on something when the timer goes off, that's probably usually the time, or if you feel like you like it, you can stop early as well. So like most things in life, if you can look at something from another perspective, you usually have a little bit better understanding of it. And that's the same kind of idea here. Instead of drawing the shadows, we're actually drawing the highlights with the eraser. And this helps us to look at it from a different point of view and understand it just a little bit better. The more you understand faces and how they work, the more authentic your stylized faces will be. And even if you have no intention of drawing realistically, these realistic shadows are very important for your stylized work. Give him an eyebrow. Okay, so your assignment is to do 6 of these. They're quite small. As you can see, they're just a little bit bigger than my finger. So if you go too big, they start to take too long. So 6 of these, and then we'll move on to our main lesson. Okay, for your main lesson, you'll need your pastels, your pencil in case you want to use the sharper eraser, a kneaded rubber eraser. And the great thing about these is if it gets dirty, which it will with this project, you just knead it out and it becomes clean again. It's kind of like magic. I love it. Okay, so this, you're going to do 6 of these colored faces, either with soft pastels or pan pastels. And it's the same idea as you just did with the pencil and eraser, only this time it'll be multiple colors and eraser. So I'm going to use my fingers to go ahead and start rubbing some pigment on. I also, though, will first demonstrate I can use my a paper towel if I would rather. I often will use my fingers, but it's completely up to you. And I'm just roughing in a kind of a head shape. And I know from my old man and also my eraser drawings that the eye sockets tend to get darker, the mouth is darker. So I'm going to just go ahead and block that in. This is kind of a rough face. And now it's time to pull out the highlights. Foreheads, cheeks, noses, these are things that are protruding out. And so I'll start there. You need to maybe move your eraser so that you have a nice, skinnier area to work sometimes. And this project will be easier or harder depending on your paper. This happens to be a Canson mixed media sketchbook and it works really well. Watercolor paper works great. Anything really works, it's just you might find yourself scrubbing a little bit harder than you see me here depending on the paper you have. I could also go in with my pencil, especially in these areas such as the eyes. And we're working fairly, a little bit bigger than we were, but still fairly small, which means that the kneaded rubber eraser and your fingers might be a little bit clumsy, but that adds to the charm, I think. It's sort of like you use these clunky tools and it sort of forces a looser product. And these faces are meant to be loose and expressive. These pan pastels, they tell you that they erase, and they do, but they don't erase completely. So I've never been able to erase them completely. So that's the pan pastel. I'm just going to show you quickly a face in regular pastel. And what I would do is the same thing, the same idea. I'd put out a palette, and then I'm going to lift it with my finger. These are just colors that I've picked that have a different range of values, like the yellows have a lighter value and the red and the brown have a darker value. And I'm going to do the same thing. Just get it on there randomly. And the pastels, the chalk pastels tend to be a little bit lighter. The outcome is a little bit lighter than with the pan pastels, but they still look great. And you can always go back in, of course, with more pigment if you find you've erased too much or in areas that you don't want. You can even go back in, of course, with some pastel right on your paper if you would like. But the main point of these exercises, and again you're going to do 6 of these faces, is to begin to play with lights and darks. And it just gets a little bit more complicated when you add color into it like this, okay? So 6 of these, 6 of the black and white ones, and then the worksheet. That makes 13 faces today, added to the previous ones of the week, and you have 50 faces for the week. So congratulations, have fun with these and post them online, and I'll see you next time.